Can you please leave? My God. Hello, welcome to White Davy Gardening Q&A Live. Um, yeah, sorry about the distraction. My kids came in here and were dancing some silly dance and making noise. Yes, so we are going to be talking about learning from our gardening mistakes. Yes, I hope you guys will feel free to share what mistakes you've made this year in your gardening and how you plan to how what you how you overcome them or what you plan to do in the future to ensure you don't make the same mistakes again. Hopefully, for those who are new to the live, they are new to gardening, will be able to benefit from the information that we will be sharing. Yes. Okay, so every year there is always so much to learn in the gardening process because no matter how experienced we are or how inexperienced we are, we all make mistakes in our garden or in our day to day lives. So, sharing those experiences, I'm hoping that it will be able to help others to either avoid or know how to solve that problem if they face it in the future. Right. Yes. So I'm going to be sharing some of my experiences, some of my mistakes, and hopefully you will share yours as well. Because sometimes we are very experienced in gardening, or sometimes we have a little bit of experience, but then the type of mistake that one person make might not be the mistake that another person would make. And so that person would not be thinking about that particular type of mistake. They're thinking about the mistake that they're more likely prone to make. So sharing those experiences is worth it. So hi Han White, how are you? Yes, so to start off with, one of my mistakes this growing season is that I bought beefsteak tomato from the garden center because the ones that I had sown from seeds, they died. So I bought beefsteak. Okay, you're doing well. That's good. Yes, so I bought beefsteak tomatoes from the garden center. That's not the mistake. The mistake, I did not know that it was actually the bushy type because it didn't specify, unfortunately. And so one of the mistake that I made is that the tomato spread, it was just hanging all over the place, and then I did not prune it often enough. So although I was pruning it, I wasn't pruning it often enough. So it was just a big cluster. I did not trellis it because time and circumstances did not allow me to trellis it. And so it was just hanging all over the place. And quite a few of them were hanging over the place. And then I got seeds from other gardeners, and I didn't know some of them were the bushy variety tomatoes. So those were just hanging over the place. And then I grow them in raised beds. So every time I pass the raised bed, because they are not trellis, and especially if the kids are playing, because I did not trellis them, so they would bounce the plant and then the plant would break. So that is one of my mistakes, not trellising all of my tomatoes. Some were trellis, but the ones that were growing in the main raised beds, they the main raised bed, they weren't trellis, and so constantly bumping against them and cause a lot of the stems to break. And then now I have, even though my raised bed is what, 18 inches high, they hang so low that the plant is actually hanging over and touching the ground. So some of my tomatoes are actually resting directly on the ground. Yes, I'm always mindful when the kids are outside to make sure they don't run in that area because I don't want them to crush the tomato. And you might ask, why not just go and trellis them? But for those of you who are familiar with my videos and my live, you'd know that I damaged my finger. So for the entire summer, from July until now, well, in the last 2 weeks, I've been using my hand to some extent. So trellising it wasn't an option for me. So that was my mistake. I should have probably gotten someone to trellis it for me. Hi, Russell. Let's see. And what it says, the ones I gave you are the bushy ones. Yes, I got to see that afterwards that they were the bushy variety, especially for those San Marzona and the mini San Marzona. So they were the bushy type as well, and they definitely are the ones hanging down on the ground. But now that they're ripening and I'm tasting how delicious they are, I definitely don't want the kids to be stepping on them and crushing them. How are you, Russell? Yeah, so that's one of the mistakes that I made. I should have gotten those tomatoes trellis. So if you guys have made mistakes this year with your gardening, please feel free to share. Yes, and another mistake that I made. Okay, you're doing good. Excellent. Yes, another mistake that I made this year is actually underwatering my tomatoes. Yes, I do water quite a lot, but then with all the heat that we were getting, I should have been watering more. I'm doing okay, Russell. Thanks. Yes, I'm doing okay. Let's see. And why it says, I learned not to overlook insects that I don't know. Yes, that was one of the lessons that I learned too. In fact, it's among one of the points here for mistakes that I've made. Yes, so I underwatered my plants, and so what I've noticed is that for two of my beefsteak tomatoes, one that is in my self-wicking bucket and one that is in the main raised bed, it tend to have bottom end rot on it. And then another mistake that I have made regarding the bottom end rot is that even though I added crushed eggshell to the garden, I did had some before planting, and I had it some after, but the ones that I had it after, I think I had it them too late because, as you know, eggshells they take a good while to break down. They can take, depending on how finely crushed they are, or if you just put them there in large chunks, they can take anything from 3 months to years to actually break down. So I think I added the eggshells, the second set of eggshell to the tomatoes a little too late because I did that because I thought what I added first was enough. But then when I started noticing the bottom end rot, I added more. But then that might have been too late. And then with me underwatering, so yes, it didn't correct the problems. Of course, tomatoes, the actual tomatoes that develop bottom end rot, cannot be undone, but then the new ones that the plant produce would not have it if the plant is able to absorb enough of the calcium. So that is one big mistake that I've made. Let's see, and why it says they were one after another. One after the other insects that you have overlooked. Yeah. Okay, yes, you're saying it can take years for the eggshells to break down. Yes, I've actually heard one composter on YouTube said he added the eggshells. He just used the eggshell and put them in his garden as is, so he didn't crush them or anything. And he had it in his compost bin for 5 years. Yes, so crushing your eggshells before putting them in your garden or in your worm bin is definitely worth it, because who wants to sit and wait 5 years for it to break down? So I should have added my castings to it because I feed the eggshells to my worms. Yes, I did add castings, but then because of the amount of compost that I added to the raised bed over the fall, I didn't want to add too much nutrients. So this year I did use less castings than I would in previous years. Yes. Yes, it definitely would have helped the tomatoes. I did give it some castings, but I didn't really want to use too much just in case, because the plants were, well, I'm going to be discussing that a little bit further on too. Let's see, Rosa says, I learned I like potatoes. I like the anticipation and the suspense that I get as I grow them under the soil. You know, you're the second person that said that to me today. Someone commented on my video today, and that was one of the comments that they made. Like they like to anticipate what's going on there. Yes, I don't know. When it comes to root vegetables, and especially for carrots, I don't really mind so much because, with the exception of this year, I've always been successful with carrots. So for them, I don't mind. But like the sweet potatoes and the potatoes that I'm growing for, well, not the first time for the potatoes, but because they don't usually do well for me, so I'm always curious about what's going on underneath there. And it takes a lot of effort, especially if I see even one little leaf start to change color. It takes a lot of effort not to go and start scratching at the root to see what's going on there. So I know exactly what you mean. I like that too. I think I try to use seasonable and then the plant starts to die. So I don't know if maybe I was planting them too late in the season. Oh, hi, Helpy. How are you? Yeah, so I don't know if I was planting them too late in the season or what the story is, why they always just seem to produce little pebbles. But this time around they are doing much better. So I think I'll definitely grow them again. And this year I planted far more. I think I planted 4 times the amount that I'd usually grow. So I would definitely grow the potatoes again. They're still smaller than they should be when I compare them to the size of the seed potatoes. Then, because I just grow them from the store-bought potatoes, not from the seed potato seeds or whatever it is called, because I've never purchased potatoes like that for planting. But yes, I always planted them from the store-bought, and based on the size potatoes that I bought and the size that I harvest, they're still not up to par yet, but it's getting better. So hopefully next year they will be up to par. We'll see. Oh, and why it says they are too cheap here to have them taking up space in my garden. They do take up a lot of space, don't they? And they are cheap, but then I like growing them. Yes, I like growing them. So I'm gonna continue. I don't think I'm gonna grow as much as I did this year because I can use the space, as you rightly say, for other things. So I'm gonna grow maybe half of what I grew this year. But yeah, they do take up a lot of space. I notice there is one particular plant that is in planted in crates, and they're spread out so far that I don't even have walkway. They're like 3 feet hanging over the crate that I planted them in. I didn't know they would spread that far. At least they would grow so tall that they're hanging. So I'm thinking that maybe if I'm going to be growing them in that crate next year, I might actually have to trellis them so they don't take up space and I need that area to walk. One of the mistakes that I made this year. Yes, because once you're experiencing drought, I thought I was giving it enough water though. But then whenever you have to dig the soil and see how dry it is underneath, you realize that what you think is a lot of water is not really a lot. But it's all a learning process. Let's see. And why it says, and my garden is too small and prefer to plant things rich in iron and vitamin C. Okay, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, so the third mistake that I've made is overcrowding. And you might be wondering, what? Overcrowding, and you're always talking about overcrowding your garden. Yes, planted this year. I planted my plants with what I thought would be sufficient space because, as I mentioned before, I didn't know that some of the varieties that I'm growing was actually the bushy type. So I allowed enough space for the ones that are not the bushy variety. So obviously, I needed more space. So that has resulted in a few planted with what's that vegetable called? Spinach in that raised bed with the tomatoes. I have carrots in there and basil and everything yes, but the only thing you see is the tomatoes. It just took over everything. So if I'm growing bushy variety, then I'm going to have to either do grow them in a cage so that they are restricted and prune more often so that they won't overcrowd the rest of the plants and give them a little bit more space. But I hope I won't be growing any more of the bushy variety, except of course for the San Marzana, since as I love them, so I'll be growing them next year. Let's see, Russell says they are cheap here too. That is why I have not done before. I want to try in buckets. I tried them in a 4 by 8 garden bed that does not get sun. Neighbors' trees blocking. Oh, yeah. Hopefully, it will be successful when you grow it in the bucket next time. But yes, they are pretty cheap. All right, says I managed not to overcrowd my garden this year. Good job. Good job. You see, Russell says the garden tomatoes taste better than store-bought tomatoes. The garden tomatoes taste same as store-bought potato. Oh, garden potatoes taste same as store-bought potatoes. Okay, yeah. I've never really paid much attention to the potato taste in terms of comparing the ones I grow with the ones I bought at the store. Yeah, I've never really paid much attention to that. Maybe I would have noticed if there was a difference. Maybe not. But yes, the homegrown tomato is definitely a mile away from the ones that we buy in the stores. And they tend to last longer on the table too. They don't spoil as quickly as the store bought tomatoes. Don't ask me why. But it is sometimes I hear that fertilizers, depending on the type of first fertilizer that you use, it can cause the plants to, or the tomatoes or the fruits, to decompose faster. Yes, so I guess. But yes, I agree. Definitely worth it to grow your own tomato. Yeah, so overcrowding is one of the mistakes that I've made, and I'm going to be elaborating on that a little bit more too. Let's see. And why it says yes, that's true, Russell. Okay. Yeah, so one of the biggest mistake that I've made this year is over fertilizing. So as mentioned in previous lives and videos that I was filling my bed with compost last year. And so when I planted in it this year, a lot of my plants got burnt. Bad and not too bad because I replaced the plant. But then, because it has so much compost in there, what I ended up with is a lot of foliage on my plants, and that too has resulted in overcrowding of the garden. So, my pumpkin, for example, I grew it with peas and beans, and I also companion planted it with corns. Now, because of the amount of foliage that the pumpkin and the peas and beans produce, so it caused everything to be overcrowded, and then it also end up with a little limited airflow through the plants, and that caused my pumpkins to be suffering from powdery mildew. So that is one of my mistakes. So now I know that if I should ever make the mistake, hopefully not, of ever adding too much compost to my garden next time, I'll do my best not to. Then I'll have to make sure that I provide sufficient space, more space between the plants so that I can have a better airflow. Yeah, so that is one other mistake. But I noticed something with my pumpkin this year. It's the first time I've actually allowed, well, squash, I guess most people would call it, and not pumpkin because it's not that big orange one. Yes, so something that I've noticed, I've never trellised pumpkins before, but I specifically planted some up against the fence so that they would trellis onto the fence. And then I have some that I just allow to run along the ground. And I noticed that for the ones that are trellising onto the fence, they started producing after the ones that were that were running on the ground. And the ones that are on the fence, the pumpkins are like 3, 4, 5 times the size of the ones on the ground, and the ones on the ground started producing first. So I don't know if it is because the ones that are on the fence has their own space so they're not overcrowded or what the story is, but for those that are on the fence, they tend to be a whole lot bigger than the ones that are growing on the ground. And the funny thing is, the ones that are on the ground, they started producing up to a month before the ones that are on the fence, and the ones that are on the fence are bigger. So I don't know. I'm wondering if it is the overcrowding of the ones on the ground that is causing that to happen, or what the science is behind it. I don't really know, but these are the things I wish I knew. I wish I knew how I could find out what the real cause is. But I'm gonna try again the same thing next year. I'm not gonna overcrowd the ones on the ground, but I'm going to grow some on the ground, and I'm going to trellis some because I would like to know if it has anything to do with the fact that it is trellised why the pumpkins are growing so big. So I'm going to try that. I should jot that down so I don't forget. Okay. So, what gardening mistakes have you guys made, and what have you learned from it, if any? Yeah. So, while you're answering that question, I'll continue to discuss some of the mistakes that I have made. Yes. So, as Ann White mentioned, not paying attention to pests, well, to new creatures that we see in the garden. That is one of the mistakes that I've made too. And I know I talk about this quite a bit in several lives, But it is such a very important topic, and so I'm mentioning it again, just in case there are new viewers on the live who haven't heard or haven't had this experience, because hopefully you won't make the same mistake as I did. So, failing to identify new insects that you see in your garden, that is one of the mistakes that I made, because it has resulted in my garden not being what it is supposed to be, with all the damages and the viruses that some of these pests spread. So don't make the same mistake. If you see creatures that you don't know, research them, find out what they are, if they are friends or foe to your garden, so that you can get it under control if they are a foe. Hi, Melanie. Yeah, so you can research if they are friend or foe early, so you can start treating, because once they get out of hand, it's difficult to get them under control. Let's see. Oh, you're having aphids again. I'm sorry, my dear. Those little buggers are so resilient, aren't they? Yes, I hope you will be able to get them under control. Okay, and White is saying hi to Melanie. Okay, yes, so that is one of the mistakes that I made. And another mistake that I made is neglecting my garden. Yeah, so when I find that I am bombarded with work, I tend to neglect my garden, because there's just so many hours in the day and you can't really get to the plants as you'd like. So that has resulted in some of my plants not being as healthy as they should be. And especially in the last 4 weeks, well, 3 weeks, because I've been busy trying to take my worms indoors. And then because of the amount of work involved in getting the worms indoors before it gets too cold, so, because I'm in such a mad rush to get it done, my garden has been neglected, so it hasn't been getting enough water. And then the next thing is that, because we have been getting rain on and off, not very often, and sometimes not a lot of rain, so you come out and you see the ground looking all wet, and you think, oh, yes, we got rain, I don't have to water the plants. But then by the end of the day or by the evening, you see the plants starting to quail down. Oh, hi from Zero to Homestead. Yes. So you'd come out and you see the plants starting to shrivel up, and you're wondering, hey, what's happening? The rain, it rained, so why are the plants looking like that? But if you just move a bit of the soil, you see that it's just the very surface of the soil that is wet. So failing to water sometimes because I see it raining is a challenge, is one of my mistakes. So if it doesn't rain heavily, then I'm definitely gonna have to go out and check to make sure that there is sufficient moisture for the plants. But yes, when I'm bombarded with work, I tend to neglect the garden, because you have to prioritize what is most important. And although the garden is very important, the lives of the worms are at stake. So in this case, I've been neglecting the garden for the past 3 weeks, just to ensure that I get my worms to safety before it gets cold. So thankfully, I'm finally finished with that, so I can give my garden more attention. Hi, garden and worm lady. How are you? Let's see. And says, I will, when I'm prepping my garden for autumn. Okay, good. Okay, Honey's saying hello to from Zero to Homestead. Rosa says, earlier today, sitting down in the house, I felt something on my arm. Looked down, winged aphid. Must have picked up by the raspberry. Oh, he's probably hoping you'll transport him to some other location where you have plants going. Yeah. Yes, I've noticed that too. Sometimes I will see those creatures. You on you when you're moving around, especially if you're in the garden for a while. Okay, you're doing good. That's good. Getting ready for autumn. Okay. So, garden and worm lady, are you able to plant an autumn garden, or are you coming to the end of your growing season now? I am not able to do an autumn garden, and I'm coming to the end of my growing season, but my plants don't look as if they're at the end of the growing season yet, for the most part. Some of them are starting to change color, especially my callaloo, my amaranth. I noticed that once it reached the last week in August, the amaranth will actually start changing color. So they show signs that fall is around the corner, but where harvesting is concerned, a lot of my things are not ready yet. I haven't harvested half of my garden yet, so we'll see. Hopefully, they'll be ready before it gets too cold. Melanie says, the mistake I make is planting the peas with my sweet peppers and it covered them. Oh, when I pulled out the peas, there were tons of peppers on the ground. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, you can plant carrots and beet, garden and worm lady. Oh, that's nice. That's good. I still haven't harvested any of my carrots yet. I don't even know if I can call those carrots because I am so disappointed. It's the first year since I'm growing a garden that I don't even have anything to talk about. I usually have lots and lots of carrots, and the carrots usually look really nice and healthy. But this year, for whatever reason, there are few of them and they don't look very healthy at all. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll try harvesting one or two soon and see what's going on there. Let's see, the garden lady says, getting ready to harvest the outdoor worm bin before winter. Okay, good. Yes, I finally finished harvesting mine. I am so happy. So now I'm focusing on, well, I brought them indoors. Most of the bin has been harvested, but then I have those indoors that needs to be harvested. I still have about 6 bins that needs to be harvested, but those are in the garage, so I don't have to worry about them. Yes, so my next goal now, I'm not even going to try harvest those yet because they're safe. So my next goal now is to try to put those mesh on my worm shelves to keep the rodents and the fruit flies out. So that is my next goal. Hopefully, I'll get it done sometimes this week, or at least get it started this week. Oh, Melanie, you're harvesting, canning, and freezing. Awesome. I've never done canning, and I haven't harvested enough of anything to freeze. I was hoping that this year I would have a lot to freeze, but tomatoes I definitely will have a lot of that to freeze, and possibly sweet peppers. I have a good amount on the plants, but I don't know if they're going to make it to maturity before the freezing start. But yes, and I was hoping I would have a lot of the brassicas to freeze and my callaloo as well. But this year with all the pests and stuff, they didn't do so well, so I won't have a lot to freeze. But I guess such is life. I'll try again next year. Let's see. Garden lady says, you still having mice issues in the garage? Yes, I haven't set up my trap in there for the last 2.5 months because of my finger. I don't want to access to use the trap, and then since as it's my dominant hand that is damaged, I didn't want to set up the trap and then have it fly back and undo all the healing process. So I haven't set any trap in there. Mark, you since I started setting the traps in there, haven't seen much. I haven't seen many of them in there, but that's good. Yeah, I haven't seen many of them, but occasionally I will see one or two, so I know they are still there. So I'm going to just keep doing the traps, but then I'm going to be putting the mesh on those shells because I want to be feeding the worms food scraps. And for now, it's kind of tedious having to be for putting food scraps in tiny containers and then putting the containers in the worm bins. That's too much work. So putting the mesh on the shelf is a lot easier. So that's the route I'm going to be going with. Let's see. LP says, I'm back. Sorry, I had to take a call. No worries, my dear. Rosa says, I'm done harvesting except green tomatoes before first frost and more cucumbers for worms. Oh, okay, cool, nice. Yes, everything is so slow. I'm quite disappointed with how slow it is this year because previous years, the only thing that I would probably have to harvest at this time would be the brassicas and the and corns. But then pretty much everything else would be harvested around this time. But slowly but surely, I am getting there. Thankfully, the tomatoes are at the point where even if they don't ripen on the plant, for the most part, I'll be able to harvest them and just allow them to ripe indoors. Yes, I'm not. Some of my sweet peppers can be harvested, but some of them I cannot be harvested because they're nowhere near close to maturity. So if anything, they will just become worm food, as you say. My hands struggle due to COVID. Shakes a lot. Really? But you've had it for such a long time from such a long time ago. Yes, that is a sad thing about the COVID because I hear that the effect can be so long lasting. Some of it can be permanent and seem to be permanent, I hear, but I'm hoping that where your hands are concerned, that won't be the case. Yeah, I'm really hoping that that won't be the case. But I would have thought that by now it would have improved. Yeah, hopefully it does with time. Let's see, and White says, I'm sorry, garden and worm lady. Okay, still struggling. Neurologist said maybe time will heal. Okay, hopefully it does. I wish you all the best with that. Yes, so, okay, LP says, sorry to hear that, garden and worm lady. Yes, so another mistake that I made this year in my garden is with my companion planting, because what I have been doing is, say I'm going to be companion planting two or three plants. Then if I'm doing, for example, basil, pepper, and okra, I would do one pepper, one basil, one okra, one pepper, one basil, one okra. So I'd companion plant it like that. But I noticed that when I do it like that, it results in the basil being overcrowded. So I'm thinking that when I'm doing companion planting next year and thereafter, instead of alternating individual plants, I'm going to do them in rows. So I'm going to do like maybe one row of pepper, then a row of basil, then a row of okra, so that I don't end up overcrowding the plant, because then the ones that are overcrowded don't really get to grow. And in addition to that, I think the garden looks neater when you do it in rows like that, because one of the things that I have noticed is that because the basil is so close to the pepper or underneath the pepper per se, it just tends to look bushy. Everything just look bushy. You can't see through the plants. It's not neat. So next year I'll be alternating them in rows rather than by individual plants. Yes, so these are the mistakes that I've made with my garden this year. Let's see. Okay, and Garden Lady says, thank you, Han. And LP says, one mistake I made is letting too many tomato volunteers grow. I see you're struggling with that one, LP. Yes, I see you're struggling with that one. It's kind of hard to just get rid of the plants when you see them there. It's really hard to just get rid of them. You want to save them, but as we can see, sometimes it end up with the garden being overcrowded. So I try to comfort myself when I pull out the volunteer plants by telling myself that, okay, it's not going to waste because it is either going into the compost bin or it is either going to into the worm bin. So I try to comfort myself that way. And then I pull them out. But I must be honest, sometimes I do allow them to grow. If I don't see where they're going to overcrowd the garden this year, then I allow them to grow. Previous years I would either allow them to grow in place or relocate them. But this year I have been just taking them out and giving them to the worms or putting them in the compost. Let's see, the garden lady says, thank you because of my hand, I bought a new grinder for worm chow. Okay, good, good. Should make it a little easier. And White says, I didn't do much companion planting, only marigold with tomatoes. Okay. Russell says, the garden and worm lady, have you tried oyster shell in your grinder? Let's see, LP says, I overplanted my squash bed with too many sunflowers and then I didn't cover the squash base, so the vine borers got them. Yeah, hush, my dear. Hopefully, next year when you plant your squash, you will remember to cover the base so you won't have to experience that. Okay, so the garden lady says, yes, she grinds everything in there, grinds even wet stuff. Oh, nice, very nice. What type of grinder do you have, if you don't mind me asking? LP says it's terrible. I thought, well, it's okay that they can grow there, as if I don't know that. Tomato is going to grow and grow. Oh, hi, Herman girl. Yes, it's so easy to just let them stay there and grow, but sometimes it works out depending on how much of them are actually growing in the garden. But then if it is a lot, then it don't necessarily work out. So even if you're not going to remove all of them, it might be a good idea to remove a few of them. But as I was saying in my live, I think that was either Friday or Monday last week, the ones that tend to volunteer, they grow so much better than the ones that we start from seeds or that we transplant. So sometimes that too can be one of the motivating factors why we might not want to pull them out, because we know they're going to outperform the ones that we planted by ourselves. Let's see. The garden lady says electric grinder, mill grain corn, 3,000 watts. Wheat feed, flour, wet and dry, cereal machine. Okay. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, you bought it on eBay. Okay. Let's see. Russell says, awesome. My processor is to grind and sift oyster shell. I do not want to sift if I can avoid it. That machine seems to be a good all-in-one. It does sound that way, yeah? Let's see. LP says, I overlooked as well that those volunteers are using nutrients. That's another point too. Hmm? Yes. So that's one of the things too. When you overcrowd your garden, you tend to have to fertilize more often than you would normally have to, because all of those plants are just going to be fighting for the nutrients that is there. So you're going to have to fertilize more. Urban Girl says, hi there, and White. Yeah, so these are the mistakes that I made this year. And I think now I'm going to have to make a record of it when I have it on. It says I have it here as the information for the live. So I'm just going to have to transfer this information to my gardening book so that I can refer back to it next growing season so that I won't be making the same mistakes. I'm sure next year is going to bring its own set of mistakes. It seems as if the underwatering always follow me around because every year I underwater my plants. This year, I must say, I did a whole lot better than previous years, but then having to deal with the constant heat wave and the drought, yes, I guess with all my improved effort, it still wasn't good enough. But yeah, it's always a learning process. Fun learning new things. Let's see. And White says, I also learned that I should have planted my peppers a bit earlier. Okay. Well, that's a lesson I learned with my sweet potatoes. I think I started my peppers and my tomatoes quite early enough where I should have been able to harvest everything by now. But then with all the pests and the plants being stunted and slowing down, I guess that's what resulted. And then with the ups and downs with the heat wave and everything, there was just too many things going on with the plants this year. So every time the plants seem to recover from one issue, there is another one for it to face. So I think that has resulted in them slowing down, but they're still doing their thing. So I guess I can't complain much about that. Let's see. Yes, I think I'm going to be planting my peppers and tomato around about the same time like I did this year. Well, I'm going to try to see for the Scotch bonnet because the hotter the pepper is, the more growing time it needs. Yes, I don't know why, but the hotter the pepper is, the more growing time it needs. So Scotch bonnet would require more growing time than sweet peppers. So I think I'm gonna start my Scotch bonnet a little bit earlier. They did start to flower early because before I was able to even transplant them outdoors in June, the first week in June, they were flowering already indoors. So they started flowering early, but then with the fungus knots and everything else that was bothering them. So I think when I started them this spring was a good time for the Scotch bonnets. So I'm going to start it around about the same time next year. Let's see. And why it says they are rather slow. So I sowed them from now for next year. Okay, good job. Yes, I'm thinking about sowing some seeds in the fall too, but I'm going to have that indoors, of course. Yes, I'm thinking of sowing some seeds in the fall because I'm going to attempt to overwinter the Scotch bonnets that I have and one of my long sweet pepper and one of my balm chili pepper. But because of the damage, they didn't produce anything, the Scotch bonnets. So I'm going to attempt to overwinter them because I can see now that they're starting to flower again, which is good. So I'm going to see if I can overwinter them and if they will do okay. If they're going to do okay, then fine. But I'm going to start some seeds just to be on the safe side so that next year the plants will be old enough to be producing. Let's see. LP says, sorry, I'm on another call, but signed in for the viewership. Okay, thank you, my dear. And White says, I sowed at the right time, but because this year's weather was a bit naughty. Yes, globally it has been a very, very naughty weather. We are fortunate though because we were able to harvest some things from our garden. I've heard of other YouTubers who said that they weren't able to harvest pretty much nothing from their garden because the weather was so bad. The heat destroyed their entire garden, or the excessive rain that they were getting destroyed their entire garden. So I guess we have a lot to be thankful for because we were still able to harvest despite all the challenges that we face. Melanie says, I got some used lumber from my neighbor to make some more raised beds. Nice. But I am scared to death of using the power saw. Hush, my dear. Um, Make sure you're wearing your safety glasses. And if you can get the one that has the shield on the side, that would be good. And if you could get ones that has the shield on the top too, so sometimes the particles will fly over the glasses and into your eyes. So if you can get those that actually have the shield here, then that would be good. And make sure you keep your fingers away from the blade. Usually on the saws, depending on which type, they might have a color coding on it. Like for example, on my table saw, there's a distance in front of the saw blade and the back of the saw blade for along the full length of the saw blade that is red. So you know the reds mean do not put your hand anywhere within that zone. So, and if you're using the miter saw or chop saw, as some call it, then that is pretty easy for you to keep your hands out of the way. Yes. So be careful when you're using it and make sure you wear your safety equipment. Make sure you wear your dust mask because those dust, depending on what you're cutting, especially if it is pressure treated lumber, you want to be careful and make sure you're wearing your dust mask. Even if it is not the commercial dust mask, even the ones that the cloth ones that you wear or the medical ones that you wear would work. So make sure you have a mask on when you're using the power saw. And just be careful. Take your time as you go. Don't rush. Take your time and you should be fine. Let's see. LP says, I started my peppers indoors early and I will certainly do it next year, if nothing else. Okay, good. So did your peppers do well, LP? Let's see. Urban Girl says, that is why my Tabasco, Scotch bonnet, and habaneros are just starting to ripen. Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy weather this year. Very crazy, but at least they're ripening now, so you'll be able to harvest them before the end of your growing season. So that's good. See, and White says, get someone who knows how to, Melanie. Okay, yes, that's another good idea. If you have someone who knows how to use those tools, then you can get them to do it for you. Mm. Okay, Melanie says her Scotch bonnet did nothing. Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I can say the same thing. Mine did nothing. I harvested what? Three? I have five plants, and from the five plants, I was only able to harvest three from one plant. That's it. So they didn't do well, but they're starting to flower again. So I'm thinking I'm going to be hot potting them and see what happens with them. If they don't perform well, then naturally they're going to become worm food, and that's the end of that. But I'm hoping this time around they will do something. I don't know. I'm still wondering if I should bother to uppot them because once they have the curly top virus, it cannot be cured. So, but I think I will uppot them and then see what happens. If they're not performing, then I'll just feed it to the worms. See, Melanie says, that's what I have to do, Hanoi. Okay, good. Better safe than sorry. Urban Girl says, I am so blessed with the amount of rain we had to have gotten. Sorry, I'm so blessed with the amount of rain we had to have gotten such good harvest this season. Excellent, excellent. Yes, I didn't get enough rain, unfortunately. I was looking forward to it, but now that the growing season is almost at its end, now is when the rain wants to fall. Well, we haven't had any in the last week or so, so drizzle, but didn't really rain. But the last week in October, first October, the last week in August, first week in September, we got a reasonable amount of it. So now my tanks are full, and I'm sure I won't be able to use off all that water for the rest of the growing season. But anyway, at least I'll just empty it and use it to water the grass and store the rest for my worms. Let's see here. And White says her Scotch bonnet just started flowering. Yes, and I think you started your pepper as well. Apart from my Scotch bonnets, you started your peppers the same time that I started my peppers as well. So yeah, they should be flowering and producing fruits by now because 6 months have definitely passed. But these little plants, they're just struggling to do their best under the circumstance. See, and White says she will definitely overwinter it. Okay, good. Hi, Pure Pondering. How are you? Says, I'm so glad you mentioned the face shield. I just popped my earbuds back in as you said it. It reminded me that I need to take a shield home before I start working again with my chipper. Okay, good. Yes. So I got myself, I usually don't wear face shield. I wear goggles, the safety glasses, but I usually don't wear face shield. But I went and got myself one. Yes. I've always been safety conscious, but I think I'm going to be trying my best to be even more safety conscious if possible. Because, sometimes you might be doing, you just cut in maybe one piece of board and you say, oh, don't need to put on my glasses. It's just one board. It's going to be okay. But sometimes just that one time can be all it takes for something to happen. So, yes, try to be safe as much as possible. Yes, and I forgot to mention the ear plugs too for Melanie. So thanks for the reminder where that is concerned. So wear your earplugs as well because those saws can be pretty loud, and especially if you're going to be cutting indoors. Let's see. And White says, that's great, Kiki. We had a lot of rain too, but with winds, which didn't go down well. Yeah, we got the winds, we didn't get the rain. Melanie says, from my chili, I made 1 quart of pepper sauce. Nice. I have a batch drying. Awesome. And I'm going to make some more sauce. Nice. I've never made, well, we make pepper sauce in Jamaica, but our pepper sauce, we call it pickle pepper. Yes. But I wanted this year. I was really planning on getting those Scotch bonnets so that I could make some of those pickle pepper. But man, I'm so disappointed because I mean, I started those peppers. I think that was either late December or January because I was just testing for the five Scotch bonnets that I have. I was only just testing the seeds to see if they're viable because I was sowing them from store bought Scotch bonnet peppers. So I wanted to see if they were viable. So that's all I was doing. And then they were doing so well. They were growing so fast. They were looking so good. So I was just planning 5 plants. Oh, yes, I'm going to be getting a lot of Scotch bonnet peppers. So I was just ecstatic as I think about the peppers. But man, am I ever disappointed. Yeah, but hopefully next year will be better. We'll see. I'm definitely going to. I have already started taking steps to ensure that I won't have to deal with the fungus knots and all those things when I'm starting my plants indoors. So next year definitely should be a lot better. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to make sure that those plants that are really, really important to me, I'm definitely going to try to grow them in a raised bed that actually has a cover so that I can protect them as much as possible. Because man, am I ever looking forward to those Scotch bonnet peppers. And Y says, yes, I started my Scotch bonnets in December. Yeah, that's a big disappointment because it's what, 9 months? 9 months. We should have been harvesting like crop after harvest after harvest after harvest of peppers by now. But I guess that's life. You win some and you lose some. We just don't give up. We just keep going because sometimes the win is more than the loss. So we just keep going. Let's see. Pure Pondering says, I had a thin mulberry limb slap me across my glasses a couple weeks ago. Ooh, wow. So that could have been your eyes quite easily. Yeah, I'm glad it didn't cause any damage. Okay. Urban Girl and Pure Pondering are saying greetings to each other. Let's see. Urban Girl says, Melanie, I'm making jerk sauce. Ooh, with a handful of Scotch bonnet and habanero. I have Okay, I'm making jerk sauce with a handful of Scotch bonnet peppers and habaneros I have that actually ripens. That's nice. Nice. What are you going to be jerking? Pork or chicken? Yeah, we always talk about pork and chicken, but I don't think that's the only meat that can be jerk, is it? Jerk rabbit, for those who eat rabbits. Yeah, there's so many meats that can be jerked. Oh, hi, Jaspreet Singh. How are you? Let's see. Melanie says, I made it just like the pickle. Wait 2 weeks and then blend. Oh, okay, cool. I've never blended mine. Yeah, I never blended my pickle because, I mean, oh, are you talking about the jerks seasoning you made like the pickle? Yeah, I've never blended my pickle because as much as I like the flavor of the Scotch bonnet, I don't really like too much of the heat. So I don't think I would blend my pickle because I like to just take the peppers out. And my hubby can eat the pepper, but I don't want the pepper to eat, so I like to take the peppers out. Let's see. Urban Girl says, glad you are okay, Pure Pondering. Oh, jerk shrimp. Never jerk shrimp. That should be interesting. Yes, that should be interesting. Yes, that's the next thing. I was so looking forward to making a lot of jerk seasoning from this Scotch bonnet pepper. Man, it is so disappointing, but I'll keep trying. One day I'm going to have a lot of Scotch bonnet peppers to harvest. Don't know when. Hopefully it will be next year. Or if the ones that I'm going to attempt to overwinter does well, then maybe I can even start harvesting some peppers indoors over the winter. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. But time will tell. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to be saying goodbye shortly. Again, it was fun talking with you guys. Let's see. Urban Girl says, yes, overenter it. That will be fun to watch. Who says I'm going to be showing it? Yes, well, if I'm overwintering it, I'll show it. I'll show it so you can see if it is going to make it or if it's not going to make it and if it decides to produce anything over the winter. Yes, if I'm overwintering, I'll definitely show it. I don't know whether I'm going to be overwintering in my garage or in my house. We'll see. Time will tell. Melanie says, I will be doing Caribbean green seasoning. Nice. At Kiki Soto, always nice to have jerk sauce on hand. Oh, come on. What? Yes, I'll definitely show it. Don't worry. Yes, as long as I'm overwintering it, I will show it. So I've been gathering the plants that I'm going to be overwintering. But as for the peppers, I don't know. I'm kind of timid to take them up because they're doing so well right now. I don't want to take them up and then something happens to them, like I did with my Portugal that I transplanted. And silly me, I put it in the sun and I did not water it, forgot to water it. And when I realized what I did, it was too late. So it looks as if it is dead. Yeah, so I'm kind of afraid to take up the peppers because at the moment they're flowering. So I don't really want to disturb them. And then I have some peppers for my long sweet peppers and my balm chili. I don't mind the scotch bonnet because they haven't been doing anything all season long. So even if the flowers that's there now fall off, they can reflower. But for my long sweet peppers that I want to overwinter, because some of them haven't reached the maturity stage yet, I don't really want to disturb them yet. So I think maybe I'll wait a little bit more until maybe another week or two before I uppot them. But anything else that can be uppotted, I'm just gradually uppotting it because I don't know when it's gonna get cold. It can be any day now because surprisingly we haven't had any snow yet. Because sometimes this time of year we'll get just a little, nothing to complain about. It would just snow and melt right away, but we've had snow in September for the last couple of years. So far none, so I'm happy. Let's see. Urban Girl says, that sounds so good, Melanie. But says, I would eat rabbit year round if someone else would turn them off. I don't have a problem cleaning them, just turning them off. Okay. I guess you are somewhat like me, Russell. When we were raising chickens and goats and pigs and rabbits and ducks, and all the other siblings are okay with turning off the chickens and the ducks and the rabbits, and I'm like, I couldn't manage. Yes, that was my weakness. But oh, those rabbits, they are so delicious. Rabbit meat can be cooked to taste like practically every other meat that you can think of. So I do like their meat. It can be a bit their meat is not very tender, so you might have to cook them a little bit longer than, unless of course you're turning them off when they are not really, hmm, what would be the word? Old? Or should I say fully mature? Yes, but the meat is not very tender, not as tender as the chicken would be, but they're quite good. I love the rabbit meat. Yes, but like you said, turning them off is where my weakness is. Let's see. And White says I made green seasoning and jerk sauce every 4 to 5 weeks. Oh, nice. Yes, I haven't made green seasoning in Lord knows how long. Been maybe more than a year. I can't find the time. It's not that I don't want to, but time is just something I don't have. When I look at my schedule, my daily schedules, I'm like, is it even possible to accomplish this? Because my schedule, I start working at the crack of dawn, and 11 o'clock at night, I'm just signing off. I'm like, where do I find time for myself if I continue like this? But and that is Monday to Sunday. But I guess that is life. So much to do, and if you don't do it, it don't get done. So yes, but I'll get around to doing it. I was hoping this year. I planted so much scallion this year because I was just planning on all those green seasoning and stuff. But all my plans took a beating this year. So the harvest that I was looking forward to didn't happen, but that's just life. I will try again. Let's see. Urban Girl says, I'll be making Thai chili sauce this week as well. My plants are loaded. Yes, I did see that. Oh my goodness, girl, you got the harvest where the peppers are concerned. You're just rolling in peppers. Yes, I had to laugh when I saw someone commented on your video. I don't think it was it a video or no, the flowers, the picture that you put up about your flowers, and the person said you should do your videos with your thumb painted all green. Well, that was hilarious. Yes, yes, my dear. Snow in September, but it's usually maybe 1 or 2 days in September that you will get snow. But once you get to the first snow, it's downhill from there on. So thankfully, so far we haven't seen even the frost yet. Hopefully not, because I haven't harvested everything from my garden yet. Melanie says, I saw your video on that last year when I was thinking of making mine. Okay. And White says, and White says, I use it in almost everything I cook. Yes, it's one of those seasoning that you're just pretty happy to use as much as you can. It's so delicious. And then the good thing is that the amount that you use may determine whether or not you're going to have a jerk flavor or you're just going to have a really nice flavor that doesn't necessarily taste like jerk. So, yeah. But we don't get Scotch bonnet here to buy, unfortunately. Well, I've heard my sister in law said she found Scotch bonnet here, but it's only once. So it's not something that is here constantly. There is a Jamaican restaurant and grocery shop that sells it Scotch bonnet sometimes, but it's not all the time that they have it available. So it's hard to get Scotch bonnet here. And that is the reason why I wanted to grow so many plants, because then I would be sure that I would have a year's supply each year that I don't have to worry about. And then I would have enough to share with my relatives and friends. But we'll see. I'm going to get there someday. You just watch and see. I'll get there. Definitely going to get there. As long as life allows, I'll get there. Let's see. Urban Girl is laughing. She says, that was funny. It definitely was funny. Yeah, so I did that too until it was finished. Okay. Yes, so let's see. And why it says it is in almost every supermarket and at our local markets too. Yes, but I recently learned that there are quite a wide variety of Scotch bonnet peppers. I did not know that. It was when I went online to purchase seeds that I saw where there were quite a few varieties of Scotch bonnet. And then one particular, they have one that they call the Jamaican Scotch bonnet, and that one is not elongated, but a lot of them that I saw were somewhat elongated. The ones that are the Jamaican Scotch bonnet, they tend to be more like a squash. That those are the flat type of squash. Yes, it was more like that's what the Jamaican Scotch bonnet is like. And then you have different colors, but mostly they are yellow. And then there is the brown Scotch bonnet. Oh my goodness, the brown Jamaican Scotch bonnet. That one is hot. That one we call in Jamaica, we call it dash pot. In other words, throw away your pot because it is so hot you can so hot you might not be able to eat it. So they call it in patois dash pot. Yes, I would love to get my hands on some of those brown ones too, because they too have a really, really nice flavor. And I think that is why I love Scotch bonnet is not just the heat, but the flavor that it has. So when you combine the heat and the flavor, it's just awesome. See, Melanie says, you're doing pretty good now, White Davy. Oh, thank you. Thank you, my dear. And White says the Jamaican ones are found in our local markets. Nice. That's good. Yes. If I want the local ones, I have to send to friends in Toronto to bring some when they're coming here. Other than that, I don't really get them apart from occasionally when the Jamaican or the African store has them, which is not very often, but hopefully next year I'll be producing all that I'll need. Urban Girl says, whoa, got to find those seeds. Yes, definitely worth it if you can find those ones. Let's see. The long looking ones are found in the supermarkets. Okay. Yes, well, none of them is readily found here. But like I said, I'm not giving up on those Scotch bonnet. I tried last year for the first time to grow Scotch bonnet, and I purchased the seeds online, planted them, all excited. Two of the seeds germinated out of the whole pack of seeds, and the plants grew to that height. And for the entire summer, they did not grow past that height, not once. So this year, they managed to grow to 10, 12 inches, and they managed to flower, and one of them produced. But then this year, they had the fungus gnat issue along with the curly top virus and all. Don't, child, you know you're not supposed to be on camera, so why are you doing that? Child, go away. Go outside and close the door behind you. Sorry about that. Yes, so this time around there is drastic improvement. So hopefully next time around I'll be harvesting some Scotch bonnets. Um, you mean the brown and the regular Jamaican Scotch bonnet? The flavors are similar, pretty close, but the brown is hotter, a whole lot hotter. Yes, but they're not very popular. They're not very common. They're not easily found, but there's a website that I go to that I can find it on. It's a Canadian website. I think it is in Toronto that pretty so I think, and it's called Atlantic Pepper Seeds. So that's where I buy pepper seeds when I want them. If I want any pepper seeds that I can't get, that's where I source it from. They have the brown Scotch bonnet seeds, but I didn't buy any, unfortunately. Well, maybe not unfortunately, because the ones that I had, the peppers I grew this year, didn't work out. So if I had bought it and they didn't work out, I'd be very sad. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to be buying from them next year, buy the brown ones to grow. Yeah. What are you saying no to, Ann White? Did I miss something? Okay. And White says the long looking ones and the Jamaican ones. Oh, not quite. No, they don't. The long Scotch bonnet peppers and the Jamaican Scotch bonnet peppers, they don't have the same flavor. Yeah. All of the Scotch bonnets do have a flavor, but they don't really have the same flavor. Yeah. Okay, so seem to be my favorite word. So yes, I am going to be terminating the live. Say bye to you guys. Thanks for joining the live and for your participation. And I hope that I will see you again on Friday, all being well. And right says they do. They do have the same flavor. The ones that I got don't have the same flavor, unfortunately. So I don't know if it is a case where the ones I'm getting they're not mature enough, because I find that a lot of farmers tend to harvest their produce before it reaches the maturity stage. And when that happens, the things tend to not have the quality or the flavor that it is supposed to have. So it could be that that's what happening, but the long ones, the long scotch bonnets that I get, they don't have the same flavor. Let's see, Melanie says, anyone wants to swap some okra seeds for some giant marigold? So let me see, Melanie, are you asking for the okra seeds or are you asking for the marigold seeds? I have okra seeds. So if it's okra seeds you want, then I have okra. Let's see. Urban Girl says, have a great night, everyone. Same to you, my dear. And White says she does not like those giant marigolds. And White says, I want some purple okra seeds. Yeah, I have marigold. I don't know if they're giant or not. They grow tall because I think the ones I have now they are maybe about almost 3 feet, and I don't know if they're going to grow taller or if they would grow taller if we have a longer growing season. And they got pretty tall before they start flowering, so I'm assuming it's the large variety type. The flowers though are not big; they're small, but we'll see. So you want okra? Okay. Yes, I can get you some okra seeds, but I'm not sure if I still have your information, so you might have to send that to me and I'll send you the seeds. Okay, so I'm gonna say goodbye now. Hope you guys have a lovely evening and stay safe. See you again on Friday.